What book fucked you up mentally? Before we begin, do us a favor by clicking that like button, and subscribe to our channel for more top Reddit stories every day. A comprehensive guide to JavaScript programming. Edit. OMG, didn't expect my answer to blow up like this. Although I wanna say each and every programming language has its own use case. Just that switching from Java to React.js after years, I felt like a spider is crawling under my neck that the language allows you to add properties to an object dynamically. JavaScript would fuck anyone up. Now assembly, that's where it's at. But assembly can't mess you up. It does exactly what you tell it to do. Decided to read The Shining. Ended up getting snowed in with my family on our farm halfway through the book and finished it before we could get out. In retrospect, I should have read it during the summer. I read this book when I was 16, and it was so scary that when I saw the movie afterwards, I thought it was a parody. I know the movie is a classic, but to me, it's just so tame compared to Stephen King's writing. Felt this way about Misery. You can't put his dread on screen. The book version is just so much more demented and gory. Where the Red Fern Grows. Being forced to read that sent grade school me through a roller coaster of emotions. Edit. I really appreciate all the upvotes and people sharing their stories/experiences with this book. I figure I'll share mine. I was a bookworm between 5th and 6th grade and was really enjoying the book, so I decided to read ahead and finish the book. Needless to say, 11-year-old me crawled in bed, cried like a baby. Then after the whole class finished the book, we went on to watch the movie in class. It resulted in a room full of kids sobbing. I can only assume this is why I have more sympathy towards animals than I do people. This book definitely left an impact on many of us. Haha, oh man, I read this book in 6th grade and I was enjoying it so much but had no idea how the ending would turn out. So we had some kind of class party going on. It might have been the last day before winter break or something, I don't remember. Anyway, soda and treats for everyone, music, just a nice kickback non-educational afternoon in the classroom because our teacher Mr. Fox was cool like that. So I'm sitting in the back finishing this fantastic book, sipping on a root beer, and then I get to that fucking ending. What happened next is my own fault. I should have figured out shit was gonna get heavy, put the book down, and finish it at home. But it's just so amazingly written that I couldn't. So instead I'm slouching deep in my chair, covering my face with the book, blinking through stinging tears, finishing it. Suddenly Mr. Fox calls me out. Hey, how's that root beer? Hey John Walker's beard, you enjoying that root beer? Hey John Walker's beard. Hey, what's going on? By this point I can feel everyone staring at me. I'm terrified to put the book down, but it's too awkward, so I let it happen. Book goes down. I've got ugly snot and tears everywhere. The pretty, mean, popular girl says, "Are you crying?" Some other kid laughs. I'm just staring at Mr. Fox like, bro, what the fuck, help me out. He stares at me, confused as fuck, glances down, sees the title, and the on his face goes from confusion to oh, fuck. He walked me out of class, took me to the nurse's office while I sobbed. My friend told me that he threatened the class that the next person who laughed at me would be assigned a book report on that book and would have to present it out loud. He was a pretty rad teacher. Night Shift by Stephen King, a collection of short horror stories. I was around 10 when I started really getting into reading, and my dad had a lot of Stephen King on the shelf, so I naturally started reading his stuff. I remember many nights staying up far too late after reading, just waiting to hear So Nice come from my closet. Some of those stories genuinely fucked up my young mind. I think Stephen King excels at short stories. His novels are good, but he is a short story savant. He just is so good at tying things up in small doses. I've worn out 2 copies of different seasons. 3 out of the 4 stories there have been turned into damn good movies for a damn good reason. Scary stories to read in the dark. Dude, the pictures are what fucked me up the most. Although I do attribute those books for making me the horror lover I am today, I'm incredibly excited for the movie. The picture for The Thing scared me the most. Not a book but a short story. The Lottery. My 7th grade class read this and recreated it by picking a kid and pelting them with crumpled up paper. This was a Catholic school FFS. Why did my public school also do this? What the fuck? Because they've always done it that way. Night by Elie Wiesel. There is nothing more unsettling than reading the inner thoughts of a Holocaust survivor. Edit. Thank you guys for sharing your personal experiences and stories. I've read practically all of them, and even attempted to comment on as many of them as I could. You're some truly amazing people. The audiobook is harrowing. Wiesel reads it and at points you can hear that he's close to weeping. The sheer horror of his experience bleeds through even more and you will not be left with dry eyes by the end. There's a good reason he didn't speak, in general, for 20 years following the camps. Ick. Edit. This was my highest upvoted comment, and it's my cake day. In the words of Ice Cube, today was a good day. Thank you, Reddit. A man who went to my church when I was growing up was in one of the first jeeps to arrive at the gates of Buchenwald, the camp Wiesel was liberated from. Most people remember him as being in Auschwitz, but he was moved to Buchenwald just before the camps were liberated. He never spoke about it. So many teenagers would try to ask him questions for school history projects and he'd always politely decline. Aside from a simple matter of fact, yeah, I was there, he never discussed what he saw. And it's hard to blame him. After marching across Europe and witnessing the Holocaust, all he wanted to do was come home to the Midwest, work, and be Santa Claus for the kids. American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Much more horrifying than the movie. I scrolled down looking for this. The detail used for some of the killings had me all sorts of fucked up. I did the same thing. That one scene is what did it for me. You know the one. PVC pipe and cheese. After reading that part I had to put the book down, and rethink what kind of life I had led that had me reading such things. Bridge to Terabithia. I also had a very visceral reaction to Tuck Everlasting. I read all this shit about tech brothers trying to crack the code to extend human life indefinitely and I'm like, why? Catherine Patterson writes beautifully but dang her books are rough. Laddie, girl gets fired from a clothing factory for saving her friend from being molested by the foreman. The great Gilly Hopkins, racist little girl in foster care. Of nightingales that weep, girl avoids ceremonial suicide only to marry her stepfather. Catherine Patterson writes beautifully but dang her books are rough. What's even worse is knowing that Bridge to Terabithia is based on a true story. Oh, and the girl Earl was even younger. Never read the book, but the movie completely did it for me. The Yellow Wallpaper fucked me up for quite a while. I remember when I read that in high school, the copy that they gave me had really bad case of old book smell and it really enhanced the story for me. Mine too. The cover was also a really sickly yellow color. Good job publisher. And it got to the point that I had this visceral reaction, pit of my stomach dread every time I looked at it. Watership Down by Richard Adams. A bloody story about rabbits. Who knew? I read it in first grade, because bunnies. I only remembered it being about bunnies finding a new home. Then I read Plague Dogs in high school, thought, this book is fucked up. Wait a minute, am I remembering Watership Down correctly? And I read it again. I was not remembering it correctly. Young brains are good at filtering out bad shit. Lord of the Flies. This is really a disturbing look at humanity. It's all the more real if you've ever worked in early childhood development, because it is so feasible it's ridiculous. Babysitting all my nephews and nieces for a weekend is one pizza delivery away from one of them getting their skull crushed and they don't even fear the idea of monsters. They would go looking for them. My son is 2 and has a little toy flashlight he uses to find monsters. One of his first words was monster, definitely his first multi-syllable word. My husband and I are big gamers and a few of the games we have on PS4 we don't let him watch because they're too spooky. But inevitably when we turn on the PlayStation he says spooky game, and wants us to either play Doom or Outlast. We don't, for the record, lol. Besides the creepy icon art-eyed why he is so interested in them, he's never seen them before. Also he's extremely good at hide and seek. Sometimes I'll actually have trouble finding him, he moves hiding spots while I'm looking, and when I do find him he likes to creep up behind me to scare me. That, plus at night when I put him to bed and he pulls me close to whisper monsters then point at the dark corner, absolutely terrifies me. Other than that he's an absolute gem of a kid, lol. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley blew my young mind away and really made me think about how society is organized. That one made me think about how close our society is to becoming that way, even closer now than at the time the book was written. The thing that gets me the most is the drug soma. It reminds me a lot of benzos. Thank you for watching this fantastic story. Please tap one of the 4 videos on the screen for another amazing top Reddit stories.